What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a look at the game Spellforce Conquest of Eo, I suppose. Not exactly sure how to pronounce that, but the game is a mix of a more standard TRPG and some strategy elements, in particular some mild 4X stuff, especially around the map and some of the management. But I do have to tell you at the beginning of the video that THQ Nordic actually reached out and gave me a copy of the game. No obligations or anything, the video itself was not sponsored, but they did provide that key, which is how I'm checking the game out. But with that out of the way, let's actually dive in and start talking about this a little bit. So, the first thing you'll do in this game is pick a class of sorts. You can pick from 3 presets: a necromancer, an artificer, or an alchemist. However, you can also customize your character a little bit, your mage, and these are pretty impactful decisions that you're making here, especially if you go the custom route, because you're going to be able to pick both a crafting type as well as primary and secondary schools of magic, and these are going to affect some of the management tools available to you, as well as even affecting some quests. To give an example, necromancer crafting allows you to, of course, make undead units, whereas alchemists can make potions and explosive for use in battle, or your artificer can create glyphs or magical items to give your troops. On top of this, the various spells that you'll be able to cast on various enemy units also changes by the type of magic you have available to you. Now from there, what you're going to do is pick where on the map you would like to start, because the game takes place on a very large set map, so there's not any variations to the landscape, that kind of thing. However, every time you launch a campaign, it will randomize everything outside of like major areas of interest, things like the capital cities, major landmarks, etc., but everything else is randomized. And if the information they've provided is to be believed, there's about 600 variations therein. But this is where things get interesting. No matter what kind of class you picked up, you are called to your master's tower, where you learn they've been attacked by the Circle of Mages, who are trying to keep the secret of how to manipulate a very powerful source of magic to themselves. Your job is to instead use it for yourself and become the most powerful mage in the land, following a story along the way, but a story that is pretty open-ended. There will be story events and things like that that you can chase down, but by and large, the specifics are up to you, because in taking over your master's tower, you get access to a domain, which is how you'll start racking up resources. Everything inside that little blue area is yours, and as you both level up your tower and increase your influence, that will grow. But in order to do that, you're going to need minions and apprentices. So your minions are effectively your standard units. You can hire or create them in the necromancer's case, and this is usually based off settlements within your domain. For instance, if you are sitting on a domain that has goblins in it, that kind of thing, then you can hire goblins, which might cost you a little bit of gold, but pretty standard unit stuff. However, each stack, as they like to call it, that is to say group of about 5 units, can be given an apprentice. These are your apprentices. These are your strong sort of hero units that have more powerful support abilities. You'll gain one as part of the story, and then you can start recruiting them at magical academies throughout the map, and you can use them to lead your forces. They're special for a variety of reasons. For starters, unlike your minions, they don't truly die if they fall in battle, as your minions can place a lodge on the map that will both expand your domain as well as give them a place to respawn. If they die on the map without having a lodge anywhere, then you'll have to use a spell to resurrect them. But let's talk about your tower for a second. Once you take over a tower, you can start adding rooms to it, and then as you gain mastery, or levels in a way, you can level up your tower, which will allow you to add more rooms, and each room you build within your tower gives you access to more and more things that you can do, such as allowing you to perform your class's version of crafting, etc. Leveling up your tower will also increase your sort of base area of domain, and there's little spots on the map you can take control of that will do this as well. But all of this is largely in service of preparing your units for battle, gathering your own strength before ultimately taking on your enemies. However, before we discuss the actual battles, I do want to mention your character's grimoire. Throughout the game, you'll be researching various spells and things which will give you access to utility to use both on and off the battlefield, such as spells that will heal your minions, potentially debuff the enemy, etc. And everything you learn in the grimoire are from research is based on the type of magic you picked towards the beginning of the game. So you do have a more direct method of intervening as well, which is something to keep in mind. But when you're finally ready with all of that, you can take your troops in your assigned stacks and start assaulting the enemy with them. And you don't actually have to fight these yourselves. You can use auto-resolve, though I will say probably my biggest criticism of this game as it stands is that the auto-resolve doesn't always work super well, to the point where I've had units that were like double the enemy's power rating or enchantment rating, and the auto-resolve still sees you lose, which can be kind of frustrating. So, assuming you are going to manually battle, here's where the regular old turn-based battles come in. For the most part, this is what you would expect. There is a sort of hexagon-based grid. Every unit has 3 actions. Each side takes all of their turns at once, and the battles themselves are relatively quick. Each unit represents a small grouping of various NPCs of that type, and there's your usual strengths, resistances, that type of thing. But one thing that is interesting is that every unit has 3 actions. They can use these to move or move and attack, but if you attack, they will use all of their action points to do that thing, which will see increased damage, of course, if you use all of the actions. But in melee range in particular, enemies will retaliate, which actually costs them action points on their own turn, which means attacking an enemy in melee that isn't going to be able to do significant amounts of damage to you is also going to be stealing their turn away from them, which can be certainly pretty helpful and is an interesting mechanic to play around with. Beyond that though, each unit has various skills available to them. This is where your apprentices in particular come in handy, as they're going to have the most powerful abilities. But overall, these are relatively quick skirmishes that aren't designed to take very long given the nature of the rest of the game. But that is the general gist of the title, and then from there, you take all of those lessons and try to conquer the map and secure your place against the Circle of Mages as a result. But from here, I want to offer up some more general information, and that is, as I've already stated, not a huge fan of the auto battles, or at least how they're implemented currently. They seem a little wonky, but the idea is solid enough. Beyond that, another criticism I have is that the game does not present information very clearly. Sometimes you're left with little to no direction, and with a game with this many systems, I think it could do with a slightly better tutorial, quite frankly, or at least a more dedicated one. Now, that said, you can certainly figure some of this stuff out. It's not impossible by any means. After about an hour or so, I was feeling pretty comfortable with it, but I did notice a lot of stuff just goes very unexplained, and a sort of in-game codex wouldn't hurt. Beyond that, though, while you're exploring the map, you can also run across various side quests. Some of these side quests will take into account your class. For instance, there were quests where I could see an alchemist would have a special interaction, or my necromancer that I was playing would get to do something special with, the undead that wouldn't be available to another class. And given the sheer number of side quests and things that can be randomized in this map, I think that's pretty cool. And because of all these features tied together, you could easily spend a couple hundred hours playing this game, seeing all the variations, playing as different classes and different difficulty modes. There is certainly a ton of content here, and I think that's pretty admirable given the price of the game, because they're only asking $30 in the US for this title. Combine that with a world that is genuinely pretty interesting just from the little bit I played of it, and I think you've got a pretty great deal on offer here. But this is a relatively niche style of game, so I wouldn't go so far as to say this is for everyone, but they're dealing with a lot of cool stuff here that I think is worth checking out. And honestly, if I wasn't already busy with other stuff, I'd probably stop to actually properly review this title, because I'm very interested in everything they've got going on here. All in all, it certainly looks pretty interesting, which is why I wanted to share it with you, the viewers. So truly, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found the video interesting, informative, all that stuff. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But again, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.